I pulled up to my sister Carly's mansion, my old sedan looking painfully out of place among the luxury cars in her circular driveway. My 8-year-old son, Jake, fidgeted nervously in the back seat. The grand house loomed before us, its windows glowing with warm light that somehow felt cold to me. I hesitated before getting out, but Jake was already unbuckling his seatbelt, excited despite my reservations. Dinner began, with my stomach in knots. When the food arrived, Carly's 3 children received steaming platters of lobster and butter. The server placed only a glass of water in front of Jake. "Where is his dinner?" I asked. "We don't feed extras," my sister said with a dismissive smile. My mother nodded in agreement. "You should know your place." I just smiled and said, "Noted." The drive home from Carly's house was quiet. Jake had fallen asleep in the back seat, exhausted and hungry. I had managed to sneak him half my dinner roll when no one was looking, but it wasn't enough for a growing boy. Street lights illuminated his face in rhythmic flashes as we drove, and I could still see the confusion and hurt in his expression from earlier. "Mom, why doesn't Aunt Carly like us?" he had whispered as we were leaving. I didn't have a simple answer. How do you explain decades of family dynamics to an 8-year-old? At 32, I was 4 years younger than Carly, but the gap between our lives might as well have been a century. After my divorce 3 years ago, when Jake was just 5, I had been scrambling to keep our heads above water. His father, Daniel, had simply disappeared one day, leaving nothing but a note saying he wasn't cut out for family life and a mountain of debt I hadn't known existed. I worked as an office assistant at a small marketing firm during the day and took freelance writing gigs at night. After Jake went to bed, sometimes I would look at the clock to find it was 2:00 in the morning and I'd been editing corporate blogs for hours, the words blurring together on my screen. Carly, on the other hand, had married Alan Green to a commercial real estate fortune right after college. She had never held a real job, but called herself the chief creative officer of her husband's company, though as far as I could tell, she mainly attended charity lunches and posted about them on social media. Our parents had always favored Carly. She was the pretty one, the charming one, the one who made them look good at country club gatherings. I was the quiet one who preferred books to parties, who questioned things rather than smiling politely. I remembered my 10th birthday when my parents had promised me a special celebration. I had been looking forward to it for weeks, had even made a careful list of the 4 friends I wanted to invite. The day before, Carly, then 14, had gotten into a prestigious summer program, and suddenly my birthday dinner became her celebration. My friends were never invited. My cake had "Congratulations, Carly" written on it. When I cried in the bathroom, my mother told me not to be selfish, that some people in the family simply had more important accomplishments. That pattern continued throughout our lives. When I got a scholarship to college, Carly got a new car for trying her best despite mediocre grades. When I graduated with honors, the family celebration was cut short because Carly had tickets to a concert. I pulled into my friend Tara's driveway where we had been staying for the past 2 weeks. Our apartment building had been sold to developers, and with the current rental market and my limited budget, finding a new place had been impossible so far. Tara had generously offered her guest room until I figured things out, but I knew we couldn't impose much longer. That was partly why I had accepted Carly's dinner invitation, despite my better judgment. I had hoped that Jake could have one nice evening playing with his cousins in their game room with the giant TV and every console imaginable, eating a good meal at a proper dining table, instead of balancing plates on Tara's coffee table. I should have known better. As I carried Jake inside and tucked him into the fold-out sofa, I thought about the strange conversation I'd overheard between Carly and Alan before dinner. They hadn't noticed me approaching the living room. "You need to just ask her," Carly, Alan had said, his voice tight with frustration. "I will, but let's soften her up first," Carly had replied. "You know how she gets that look when she thinks she has the upper hand. By the end of the night, she'll be grateful for any crumbs we throw her way." At the time, I had assumed they were talking about offering me money. Carly occasionally made a show of her generosity, giving me her old designer clothes or offering to loan me money that we both knew was a gift with strings attached. I always refused. Now, as I changed into pajamas in Tara's bathroom, my phone buzzed with a text from Carly. Need to talk business. Lunch. Tomorrow my treat, of course, and suddenly it clicked. Carly didn't want to give me money, she wanted something from me, and that realization changed everything. The memory of that dinner kept playing in my mind as I tried to fall asleep. The look on Jake's face when the server placed elaborate lobster platters in front of his cousins Madison, Tyler and Emma, while he received nothing but water would haunt me for a long time. Isn't Jake having dinner? I had asked, keeping my voice level despite the humiliation burning in my chest. Carly had exchanged a look with our mother, who was visiting from Arizona for the week. We didn't know you were bringing him, Carly said, though I had specifically mentioned it when she invited me. I told you I was bringing Jake, I said. You said it would be nice for the cousins to play together. Did I? Carly tilted her head. I must have forgotten. We only planned for the regular family members. You know how the chef gets when we change the head count. Last minute, the regular family members, I repeated slowly. That's when Carly had slid the water glass toward Jake with a dismissive flick of her manicured hand and delivered those cutting words, "We don't feed extras." Jake had looked down at his empty place, setting his small shoulders hunching forward. You should know your place, Melaine, my mother had added, sipping her wine as if she hadn't just endorsed treating her grandson like an unwelcome intruder. I had simply smiled and said, noted. What? Under the table, my fingernails dug into my palms so hard they left marks. The dinner only got worse from there. Carly's husband, Alan, kept giving me apologetic glances but said nothing to contradict his wife. He was a tall, distinguished-looking man with salt and pepper hair who had always been polite to me, if somewhat distant. Tonight he seemed particularly uncomfortable, continuously checking his phone, as if hoping for an emergency that would excuse him from the table. My mother spent the meal praising Carly's children for every minor accomplishment, while peppering me with questions designed to highlight my struggles. Madison is first chair violin. Now she beamed at my 11-year-old niece, who was picking listlessly at her lobster. And Melaine, are you still at that tiny marketing company, the one with the funny name? Apex Marketing isn't tiny, I replied. We have clients across the country. Of course, dear, my mother said in a tone that made it clear she didn't believe me. And how is that little apartment of yours? Have you managed to fix the leaky faucet yet? I didn't bother telling her we didn't even have that apartment anymore. Throughout the meal, Jake sat quietly beside me, occasionally whispering when he thought no one could hear. It's okay, Mom, I'm not even hungry, but I could hear his stomach growling, and I discreetly passed him bites from my plate when I could. Tyler, Carly's 9-year-old son, kept showing off his new video game system to Jake, describing in detail all the games he had, but never offering to share or play together. Emma, the youngest at 6, occasionally gave Jake curious glances, but followed her older sibling's lead and, ignoring him, when the chef arrived with dessert, he wheeled in a cart with 4 elaborate chocolate sousse, one for each of members. There was also a small plate with petit fours that Carly pushed toward our mother and me to share. Nothing for the boy, the chef asked, looking at Jake. Before I could speak, Carly cut in, no, he's fine, they're leaving soon anyway. The chef, an older man with kind eyes, frowned slightly but nodded and left. Excuse me, I said, standing up, I need to use the restroom. Once alone in Carly's cavernous marble bathroom, I leaned against the sink, taking deep breaths to keep the tears at bay. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me upset. Jake deserved better than a mother who couldn't stand up for him. As I was about to leave, I heard voices in the hallway outside. Carly and my mother had stepped away from the table as well. Do you think she'll do it? My mother was asking. Of course she will, Carly replied with a laugh. You saw how desperate she looked. Besides, $500 is generous for someone in her position. What exactly do you need her to write again? The presentation for the Westfield account, Carly said. Alan says it's crucial we land this one, and everyone knows Melaine has a way with words. I'll have her do all the work. Make a few tweaks so it sounds like me and no one will know the difference. Clever, my mother said approvingly. And it gives you a chance to help her out financially without it seeming like charity. You've always been so. Thoughtful, I stood frozen, my hand on the doorknob, so that was Carly's game. She needed my writing skills but would frame it as doing me a favor. $500 for what would probably be 40 hours of work when freelance writers with my experience charged at least $75 an hour. And the Westfield account, I felt a chill run through me. Westfield Communications was one of the largest media companies in the region, and I happened to know my own company Apex. Marketing was pitching for their business too. My boss Sarah had mentioned it just last week, saying landing Westfield could mean expansion, new hires and promotions for the current team. If Carly's company won the account instead, it could mean the opposite for Apex. In a small firm like ours, losing a potential major client could mean downsizing. My job could be at risk. I took another deep breath, straightened my shoulders and opened the door with a pleasant smile on my face. Whatever game Carly was playing, I wasn't going to be the pawn she expected. I returned to the table with a new sense of resolve, though I maintained my carefully neutral expression. Jake looked up at me with those big brown eyes that were so like his father's, silently asking if we could leave soon. I gave him a reassuring nod. So Melan, Carly said as soon as I sat down, not wasting any time now that dessert was finished. I was hopping to discuss a business opportunity with you. Oh, I took a small sip of water. What kind of opportunity? She leaned forward, her diamond earrings catching the light from the chandelier overhead. As you know, Alan's company is pitching for the Westfield account next month. It's a huge deal, potentially worth millions. She waved her hand dismissively, as if millions were pocket change to her. I'm heading up the creative team for the presentation, and I could use someone with your specific skills. My skills, I repeated, playing dumb. Your writing, she clarified, looking slightly annoyed at having to spell it out. You've always been good with words. Remember how you used to write those little stories when we were kids? What Carly conveniently failed to mention was how she had submitted one of those little stories to a high school competition under her own name and won first place. When I found out and confronted her, our parents said I should be flattered that Carly thought my work was good enough to use. I remember I said evenly, well, I was thinking you could help draft the presentation materials. Nothing fancy. Just putting together the basic content that my team would then polish up. We could pay you, of course. She named a figure that was exactly what I'd overheard in the hallway. $500 for what would undoubtedly be a massive amount of work. That's an interesting offer, I said carefully. What's the timeline? We'd need everything in 2 weeks. Alan spoke up for the first time since the meal began. The pitch meeting is on the 15th, 2 weeks. That was exactly when Apex would be presenting as well. This couldn't be coincidence. Does Apex marketing know you're poaching their employee for competitive work? I asked bluntly. The table went silent. Alan had the decency to look uncomfortable, but Carly's expression hardened. Don't be dramatic, Melan. It's just a freelance gig. People do them all the time for competing accounts. That's a conflict of interest. Only if anyone finds out. My mother interjected. And why would they, Pa? It's just family helping family. Like we've always helped you, Carly added with a pointed look. Remember when Dad paid for your textbooks in college when your scholarship didn't cover them? What she didn't mention was that Dad had paid for her entire tuition apartment and spending money during the same period. I paid him back, I said quietly. The point is, Carly continued as if I hadn't spoken, this is a chance for you to earn some extra money. God knows you need it. What are you driving these days? That Honda must be 10 years old? 12, I corrected. It runs perfectly fine. Jake, who had been quiet throughout this exchange, suddenly asked in his innocent 8-year-old voice, Mom, why does Aunt Carly talk to you like you're not as good as her? The question hung in the air like a thunderclap. Madison snickered behind her hand and my mother gasped audibly. Jacob, she scolded, that is no way to speak to adults. Apologize to your aunt immediately. Jake looked at me uncertainly. I put my hand on his shoulder, a silent signal that he didn't need to apologize for speaking the truth. Children should Be seen and not heard, my mother continued. In my day we knew how to raise them with proper manners, but I suppose that's difficult when there's no father in the picture. There's no father in the picture because he left, Jake said, his voice small but defiant. Is that why we don't get Lobster, because we don't have a dad? Don't be ridiculous, Carly cut in sharply. You don't get Lobster because you weren't on the dinner list, and if your father left, well, that was your mother's choice to marry someone so unreliable in the first place. Some people have better judgment than others when it comes to choosing a spouse. I stood up so quickly my chair screeched against the hardwood floor. We're leaving now, thank you for dinner, don't be so sensitive, Meline. My mother said, Carly's just stating facts, your poor choices are why you're in this situation. Some humility would serve you well. I took Jake's hand and started walking toward the door, but Carly's next words stopped me. So that's a no on the presentation I'm offering you. Good money, Melons, money you clearly need. Where are you even living these days? I heard through Tracy Wilson that your building was sold. Tracy Wilson was my former neighbor and apparently town gossip. I turned back slowly. You knew I lost my apartment. And you still invited me here to humiliate me and my son, before asking me to work for you at a fraction of my professional rate. Don't be so dramatic, Carly said again. I'm trying to help you. No, you're trying to use me, I countered. You know Apex is pitching for Westfield too, don't you? That's why you want me specifically. You're hopping. I'll give you insights into our proposal. A flash of something guilt perhaps crossed Alan's face, but Carly didn't even blink. Business is business, she said coldly. Family is family. I thought you could use the money given your situation. Her eyes flicked meaningfully to Jake. But if you're too proud to accept help, that's on you. Something snapped inside me then, not in a rage-filled dramatic way, but in a calm, clear-eyed realization that this dynamic would never change unless I changed it. Carly would always see herself as superior, my mother would always support her, and now they were trying to pass these toxic values to the next generation, making Jake feel lesser than his cousins. I'll do it, I said abruptly. Carly's expression shifted to smug satisfaction. I knew you'd see reason. Email me the details. $500 paid in advance. Half now, half on completion, she countered. I nodded tersely, took Jake's hand again, and this time made it all the way to the door. Maylane Allen called after me. When I turned, he was holding out a small container. Leftovers for the boy, he said quietly, not meeting Carly's outraged glare. I accepted the package with a nod of thanks and walked out into the cool night air, my mind already racing with the beginnings of a plan. By the time we reached Terror's house, Jake had fallen asleep in the back seat, the container of lobster and sides untouched on the seat beside him. I carried him inside, tucked him into the fold-out sofa, and gently woke him just enough to eat a few bites of food before he drifted off again. Terra was working a late shift at the hospital where she was a nurse, so the house was quiet. I sat at her kitchen table with my laptop open, staring at a blank document, my thoughts swirling with anger and determination. The next morning, Jake was unusually quiet as he ate his cereal before school. Are you okay, buddy? I asked, sitting down across from him with my coffee. He stirred his spoon thoughtfully. Why doesn't Grandma like us as much as she likes Madison and Tyler and Emma? The question broke my heart.